This is Allison and I'm here with the Baby Lock Chorus. The Chorus is Baby Lock's top of the line sewing and quilting machine, and there are a ton of features to love. Let's start with the way the machine looks. We have 11¼ inches of throat space to the right of the needle. We also have LED stadium lighting, which is going to give you up to 10 inches of illumination around your needle, and we have an extension table. It also comes with a free arm cover if you would prefer, but your extension table is going to keep your fabric from pulling to the side, and it's going to distribute the weight evenly, particularly when you're working on larger projects. The machine is very easy to thread. It has guides at the top, numbered so that we know where to put our thread in order to thread the needle, as well as the path for threading the bobbin. When we're ready to thread the needle, we just place the thread in the correct position, touch the button on the front of the machine, and it's going to thread the needle perfectly every time. That's called the Never Miss Automatic Needle Threader. And when I'm ready to stitch, several things are automated, so I don't have to worry about pushing a bunch of buttons or moving my hands around. I can focus on making sure that I'm stitching exactly where I want to on my fabric. So when I place my fabric under the needle, I don't even have to lower my presser foot. When I put my foot on the controller and start stitching, it's going to drop the presser foot for me, and I've asked it to give me an automatic back stitch. And when I'm finished with the row that I would like to stitch, I'm going to touch the back stitch button on the front of the machine. It gives me a back stitch. It's going to trim my thread and lift the presser foot. And then we have a beautiful stitch to show for that. You can also use a tie-off in place of the back stitch if you would like. Now, as we're stitching, one of the things that we have on this machine is a multifunction foot control. The multifunction foot control gives us a lot of options for how we want to use our foot controller if you would like to add a tie-off, add a needle up and down, a back stitch, a single stitch. We have all of those options right at our feet. So in our settings page, I can change how I want the multifunction foot controller to work. So we have a small pedal, which I can program to do thread trimming, up and down needle position, a single stitch, a reverse stitch, and also lift the presser foot. Or I can have it set to no setting. I have those same options for the heel press of the larger pedal, reverse stitch, presser foot up and down, no setting. I personally like to have it set on the thread cutting and the reverse stitch, but the great thing about this is once you take the machine home, you get to make all of this yours. We have all of our most common stitches on the front of the machine. So right now I'm on a straight stitch, and the machine is going to show us exactly what our stitch looks like and the foot that we need to have on the machine to get the best result for that stitch. So as I change my stitches, I'm going to see what that stitch is going to look like and the needle placement in relation to my foot. I can change the stitch here on the screen, and it's going to show me what it's going to look like as I make those changes. So I have my stitch width, my stitch length, the left and right shift of my needle, and my tension on the front of my machine for easy access and easy adjustments. And if I'd like to go back to the default, then I just touch that stitch again, and it's going to take me back to the original settings. We can scroll through all of the different folders of stitches that we have, buttonholes, quilting, and we can do the same thing with our decorative stitches, and the machine's going to show us what those decorative stitches look like before we start stitching. I also have the option to lower my feed dogs. We can mirror image our stitches, switch to a twin needle, and use our sensor pin. I'm going to explain the sensor pin because it's a fantastic feature. It works in conjunction with our needle placement and also with the guide beam. Now, the guide beam is something that you can use to either make sure that you know exactly where your needle is going to land on your project, or as a seam guide. As you can see on the bed of the machine, I have a solid laser beam, and here on the screen, I have my laser beam placement. As I shift the laser beam, I can see where it's shifting in relation to my stitches on the screen, and I can also see it shifting on the bed of the machine. So if I want this to line up perfectly with the center of that stitch, I can see where that's going to be by lining it up on the bed of my machine. I can do the same thing if I have a straight stitch, and I can see that those are lined up on top of each other, and I can adjust my stitch, my laser beam, to be whatever seam allowance I would like it to be. Now where the sensor pin comes in is I can move my guide beam using the sensor pin. So this is the sensor pin. I'm going to touch this icon on the screen and then let it know that I'm working with the guide beam. And then wherever I touch, it's going to move my guide beam exactly where I ask it to using my sensor pin. I can do the same thing with my needle. So if I touch the sensor pin icon and move my needle left and right, then I'm going to touch here to the left, and it's going to shift my needle over to the left. Now, as for some of the stitches that we have built into the machine, you have one-step buttonholes, you have a ton of character and decorative stitches, applique stitches, all of your garment making stitches that you would need. But one of the really fun things that you can use is your directional sewing. So your directional sewing, if you have a project that's a little bit too big to maneuver moving all of your fabric around, this is where this comes into play. So I'm going to ask the machine to stitch to the bottom left, and so I'm going to drop my presser foot, and the feed dogs of the machine are going to shift my fabric, and we're going to stitch to the bottom left. I can also ask it to stitch straight over to the right. And then back up to the top left to make an X. And then when I'm done, I can use the push button features that I have on the machine, trim the thread, and the presser foot will lift automatically. How fun is that? Now those push button features, you can use those individually if you like, or as you saw in the beginning of the video, you can use those automated by pushing these buttons here on the front of your screen. So we're going to go back to a simple straight stitch, and I'm going to show you what a pivot function does. So this button here is our pivot function. And so when I'm ready to stitch, it's going to give me the same automation, the back stitch in the beginning. But let's say I would like to turn my fabric in the middle of my project, turn a corner. If I take my foot off of the controller, the machine is going to drop the needle into the fabric and lift the presser foot up so that I'm free to turn my fabric any direction I would like. And we'll turn it here. And then we'll do a tie off, give me that reinforcement stitch, trim my thread, and lift the presser foot. So easy maneuverability with this machine. One of the other features that's built into the Baby Lock course is the automatic fabric sensor system. No matter what weight of fabric you're working with or what kind of project you're working with, the machine is going to make sure that your stitches look good and you're not going to have to make any adjustments. So let's take a look at how this works in practice. I have a tissue paper here, and we're going to stitch on this with our standard presser foot, no modifications needed. We're going to push down, that lowers my presser foot, gives me a back stitch, and works with the tissue paper like a charm. Now we're going to go from the tissue paper into 2 layers of 10-ounce denim. And it's going to give me the same quality stitch even when I double it up to 4 layers. Give ourselves a tie off and take a look at these beautiful stitches and how easy that transition was from the tissue to the denim. So no matter what kind of fabric you're working with, you're going to get a good result. Another thing that comes with the chorus is the digital dual feed. The digital dual feed is a walking foot. It has a motor built into it, and it also has a belt here. So it's going to make sure that your fabric doesn't stretch out as you take it through the sewing machine. And let's put it on the machine and see how well it works. And the machine knows that we have the dual feed plugged in. It's going to show me which stitches I can and can't use. So we can use 36 of the utility and decorative stitches with the dual feed. And one of my favorite applications with the digital dual feed in combination with the guide beam is half square triangles. It's going to make sure that my fabric on the bias doesn't stretch out, and I'm also going to get a great seam allowance using that guide beam. So I'm going to make sure that my guide beam is lined up with my 1/4 inch mark on the bed of the machine. And I'm going to take my half square triangle, which already has my center marked. I'm going to line up the mark that I have in the center of the fabric with my guide beam. And I'm going to start stitching. It's going to give me a back stitch in the beginning. And the only thing that I have to do as this stitches is make sure that my line stays under that guide beam. And the machine will move my fabric through for me. And then once I'm done, I'll give myself a tie off. And there we go. Perfect 1/4 inch stitch, and we're going to do that on the other side. So again, we'll line up our center mark with the guide beam. Super easy to use. So folks, that's the Baby Lock chorus.